Now that I have the car sitting in my driveway, there's a couple things that I wanted to get started on. I've ordered some parts for things that I know are wrong with it, but while I'm waiting, I want to tackle the DRL module repair next. So there's a couple different ways I can go about doing this. I did some research online to find out how much it would cost to just replace the DRL module. It was about $150 to get an OEM one, $100 to get one like aftermarket, and I could also go to a junkyard, possibly take one off of an old car that may or may not work, and I think it was like around $20 or $30. The option that I ended up going with, which if it didn't work I would have bought one, was to try to repair the one that I had, assuming that the DRL module was in fact the problem. So in this video I'm going to show how I diagnosed the problem, what I did to solve the problem, and ultimately resolve it. So let's get started in showing how I did that. So the first thing that I had to do when I got the vehicle back into my driveway was charge the battery up. It had been sitting, I guess, for a couple months. The battery had completely drained out. Unfortunately, I work at a place at Golden Mile Chrysler, actually, where the service department there was willingness enough to let me bring in my battery and let me charge the car battery there, trickle charge it. I apologize for the video quality, as I know it went a little blurry, but basically all I had to do was insert the battery into the battery tray. The tray itself was kind of floating with two pigs underneath the battery, so I gently placed the battery in, placed the housing over top as you saw, and then there's a clamp that sits over top that's screwed in place. I then attached the two terminals back so that way the car would receive power. And this was all necessary in order to be able to diagnose, troubleshoot the DRL module. We have the e-brake up. The car is not in gear. It's a manual transmission. Foot on the clutch and the brake. Hopefully the car will start. Alright. So we hear that buzzing noise. DRL light is on. I'm going to take the parking brake off. Although it says the parking brake light is still on. I put the light switch into the off position, and I climb out of the car to walk around to the front of the vehicle to see how the lights look. And to no surprise, all three lights are off. The regular light, the little circular light, as well as the yellow indicator light. And that's the same on both sides. I then go back into the car, turn the light switch to the second position, which basically illuminates the dashboard, and I didn't really know what to expect, but when I got back I saw that the yellow indicator lights on both sides had turned on, and that's all that had turned on. I then switched to the low beam setting and go back to the front of the car, and I see that the yellow indicator lights on both sides are on, as well as the main headlight is still on both sides. So it seems to work in the low beam setting. I then switched to the high beam position, and I see here that the driver's side headlight is on and the yellow indicator light remained on. However, the passenger side headlight turned off, but the yellow indicator light remained on. So that's problematic. I also noticed that the tiny little circular cutouts for lights that are off the entire time, I believe are lights that are used in other markets, not the Canadian market, possibly for turn signals or what have you. I went back into the car and put on the turn signals just to see how they looked and how they worked. And of course, the yellow indicators on either side illuminated accordingly. So with the light on in the middle position, the DRL light is on, you hear that little sound which turns off when you put on the low beams. Interesting. Okay, we're gonna go under where the driver's footwell is, and we're gonna remove the DRL module. I've looked to see where it's located, and you have to undo these first two tabs here, and then this thing slides off. On the back of that cover, There's a little diagram that shows where all the fuses sit and what they all represent on the back of that panel. And the fuse box itself is just sitting behind where that cover was. If you go directly beneath that and a little to the left, kind of above where the clutch pedal is, there's another cover that, when removed, will expose the DRL module box. To remove this cover, there's a 90-degree turn on a clip towards the right, which you can see right there. Once I remove that, or twist that, there's a clip on the left hand side. You just got to pull downward to release, and once you pull it downward, the entire cover slides rearward towards the back of the vehicle. While looking at the pedals, if we go straight towards them and then rotate and look straight up, we'll see the DRL module right here. The first thing I do is unplug the electrical connector that connects to that box by pushing on a gray tab. Once you push on that gray tab, you can remove the electrical connector. To the right of it, there's a screw that holds on a bolt that holds the entire module in place. You can remove the entire module, but instead, the front face of this module that we're looking at right now has clips on the four corners of that front face. If you stick a screwdriver between the front face and the surrounding shroud, you can pop off that front cover along with the electrical circuit, and it'll slide down and out.
And then this slides right down just like that. The narrower side of the case front is towards the driver, whereas this longer side here is towards the engine bay. There's also inside the case slots for where the circuit board sits, so that way there's only one way to really put this in and out.
Now that the circuit board is out of the vehicle, we can investigate and see that the 10 larger spot welds in the middle of the board are overheated, and if you look up real close you can see fine cracks in some of them. Those are the most common ones to have this issue in this type of vehicle. It's a common problem to begin with. So those are the ones that we are going to re-weld and see if we can repair this circuit board. So now we got out our cheap $10 solder iron with some solder, and as you can see, what we're doing is we're basically applying some solder by putting the solder itself on top of the contact point and then applying heat on top of that, and we're just really melting on some fresh solder onto each of the contact points that appear to have been damaged over time. Even though there were only 3 or 4 hairline cracks where we could physically see there was a poor connection, we decided to touch up all of the main contacts on the circuit board to ensure that everything was properly connected. So before I reinstall everything as it normally sits in the vehicle, I just wanted to plug in the circuit board and test out the lights to see if in fact our soldering and repair is effective.
DRL light is off.
The DRL light has now turned off with the engine running. The light switch is in the off position, and I'm going to climb out of the car, walk around to the front of the vehicle to confirm if the daytime running lights are now on. Before, they would not turn on while they were in this position, and wouldn't you know it, both headlights now have daytime running lights, so check mark. First thing is working properly, and the yellow indicator lights remain off. I'm now switching the light switch to illuminate the dashboard. See how the lights look now. And as you can see, the daytime running lights are still on, and now the yellow side marker lights have illuminated as well. And both sides match. Next we'll turn on the low beam lights, see how that looks. And I think the lights have become brighter, the main lights have become brighter, but still both headlights and yellow lights are now on. I'm now going to turn on the high beams Moment of truth, it looks like both headlights are now on and they are brighter. So the yellow side marker lights are on and the high beam light bulbs are on both sides. So it wasn't a light bulb issue, it was in fact the DRL module, and it looks like our soldering did in fact work, and the lights now work. Last thing we'll check is the turn signals, passenger side as well as driver side, both still work. I then unplugged the electrical connector because the wires weren't long enough for me to be able to finagle the circuit board back into its box. So I unplugged it, I reinserted the circuit board into its housing until the outer clips of the DRL module box housing clipped into place. I then reinserted the electrical connector. Next we're going to insert the lower cover, the one that sits directly above the clutch pedal. It slides forward into position. On the left there's a clip that you push upward as such, and then on the right there's this 90-degree turn that once you put it in place you twist and it locks in position. The last cover we install hinges at the top, so we slide it upward, and those two clips at the top on either side of the steering column fit into place, and then we rotated it into position where we rotate the two 90-degree turn locks at the bottom. And we're all set. Job well done.